another type of agriculture. But, oh, got it, recording. Again, considering your context, match land use to landscape. Enhance soil biology, and that's something that we all should be working on all the time. And whatever, again, it's about keeping those living roots in the soil, minimizing anything that would disturb your soil biology, whether that's chemical inputs or tillage or whatever that balance is, to the extent that you can add it back in, whatever you're taking away, and hopefully even make it better, build it back up. Biology is critical. Build soil organic matter. When we do our nutrient management plans for the state of Maryland, we don't necessarily have to look at our soil organic matter. It's not something that we're required to test for, but it's so important. That really, soil with higher organic matter is generally more biologically active, is generally able to incorporate, it has more carbon in it, since carbon is organic. And so it's doing more of that carbon cycling, that important climate change mitigation. It's also just more productive and kind of generally that the biology is working within that soil. So building soil organic matter is key, and that can be through cover cropping. It can be through reducing tillage so that organic matter doesn't get burned up every time we till it. All of the different practices that we use can build soil organic matter. Think systems, not shortcuts. So this is a long-term proposition. When we're looking at building healthy soils, a lot of these things don't change overnight, and it can take. There are folks who have built up their soil organic matter very quickly, mostly out in the Midwest where the soils function a little bit differently. Our East Coast soils take a little bit longer. And it's really about thinking about systems. How can I, what are the next steps I can take this year? What are the next steps I can take the year after that? How can I address these principles on my farm in ways that may make sense for my production system? Not necessarily thinking about, well, I'm going to put on 17 tons of compost to the acre and that's going to do it. That's interesting and it might be useful, but it's a shortcut. It doesn't really address your systems issue. So considering systems, not shortcuts. I love those priorities. And I keep talking about balance sheets. And this is a balance sheet that Virginia NRCS has come up with. And you can see on the left, these are practices that kind of tend to reduce soil health. And on the right, there are practices that tend to promote soil health. And again, these are going to look different on every farm, but in general, if we think about aggressive tillage, aggressive traffic when the ground is wet, an annual crop that just you take it out of the ground and you leave the soil uncovered, growing only one thing over and over again, a monoculture, annual cropping systems tend to reduce soil health. That doesn't mean we should never have annual crops. We need them. There are vegetables, there are grains, but those systems are ones that tend to reduce soil health. Crop residue removal. So if we're taking off all of the straw from a field, for example, if we're harvesting wheat, we remove the straw. Inadequate fertilization, that leaves us with a weak plant. In inorganic fertilizers, so synthetic fertilizers, again, as I said, if we provide a plant with a fertilizer that has everything it needs and doesn't require that plant to work very hard biologically, that does tend to reduce soil health because it reduces the biology overall. That doesn't mean there's no place for fertilizer. It just means that that's a practice that tends to reduce soil health. And again, broad spectrum pesticides and herbicides, because they have that negative impact of disturbing soil life and also decreasing diversity. And on the flip side, the practices that tend to promote soil health, no-till or reduced tillage. And again, doesn't mean we never do tillage. It doesn't mean we can't ever turn over the ground. It just means that working towards reduced tillage will help improve soil health. Controlled traffic, if it's really wet, we try not to drive on the fields. Cover crops and relay crops, so putting in something as soon as you take something out, or sometimes even before, we can overseed into our standing crop with a cover crop, or we can have a growing crop underneath our crop. Diverse crop rotations. So again, not just growing the same crop year after year in the same place, but rotating that crop. So we might put, a lot of us have probably seen a corn and soybean rotation. That's great, that's two. The more crops, the more different families we can put into our rotation, and the more crops we can have in our pastures, the better off we'll be. Perennial crops tend to increase soil health. That's, again, not universally true. If we have a perennial pasture and we're continuously grazing and we're overgrazing that down to a tiny little plant above the ground, that's going to be equivalent below the ground, and those roots aren't going to be doing that biological work that we need them to do. So perennial systems generally tend to promote soil health, but management is really important too. Where we can integrate livestock into crops, so if we take corn off a field and we can bring livestock in to graze that residue, that can help with soil health. And again, if it's not too wet, if we manage it correctly, that can really help improve soil health as well. Keeping that crop residue on the field, fertilizing adequately, using organic fertilizers where we can and where it makes sense given what our soil tests look like, because those organic fertilizers have more contribution to the biology and help the plants work on their own biological processes. And integrated pest management, where we're scouting, we're monitoring, and we're targeting whatever pesticides we're using to the pest that's actually present and a problem that's all actually present, instead of just using broad spectrum. So this is the balance sheet. And again, we're not talking about you have to do all of these things cold turkey all at once. It's just considering the system and how the system that you're in can move towards these healthy soils practices. Why do farmers care? This is a word cloud that was made by our board of soil stewards at the Million Acre Challenge. And these are some tremendous farmers in Maryland who really do care a lot about soil health. And you can see that what they're looking at, they care a lot about climate change. They care a lot about diversity of life. They really care a lot about profitability. And for them, this work is about ensuring that their farm continues to be profitable. So they would like to reduce their inputs. They would like to get production that costs them less and contributes more to their resilience as a farm. So they'd like to have stable yields over time. They don't like to see those yield fluctuations when there's a wet year or a dry year, and soil health can help them with that. And they care a lot about their own health and the health of their families and the health of their communities. So luckily, again, as we've talked about, soil health can help with all of these things in addition to the work that it can do to mitigate and help farmers adapt to climate change. So what does it look like? This is what it looks like on our farm. Our lambs are born on pasture. They rotate every day. This is how we try to manage disturbance. We obviously keep the soil covered. We rotate them every 24 hours. We use the no-till drill that we're able to borrow from the county in order to reseed when we need to, or to add diversity into our pastures. That's my daughter there helping me with the drill. she was better at it than I was. We do a lot of management. So we're constantly thinking about, okay, where have they been? And we don't bring them back for 60 days or until the pasture has recovered. And it's hard because, right, with the changing size of our flock over the course of the year and the changing way the grass is growing back, the pastures are growing back at different times of the year, our paddock size change and our rotation times change. So we do have the computer that sometimes just comes out to the fields with us, and we keep track on a spreadsheet of where they go. And there are apps that work too, but I have still on spreadsheets, haven't gotten to apps. So the computer's out there. But what it means is that we have these nice pastures that are improving every year and that we can graze deep into the fall. And, we would love to get to 300 days of grazing a year. We haven't. We're still feeding a lot of hay, but ultimately we would love to cut down on our hay feeding, improve our profitability. What we have seen is an improvement in the health of our flock since we started doing really management intensive rotational grazing. We have pretty healthy sheep. So our vet bills have been cut down as well. So that does help with our profitability. So that's what it looks like for us. It can look really different, as I said, on different farms. And these are 4 examples of farms that we visited this summer with the Million Acre Challenge, all of whom are doing incredible work on soil health and regenerative agriculture in really different ways. So at the top left, this is an urban farm in Baltimore called Bliss Meadows, and they're using compost. They're growing an incredible diversity of crops. They integrate livestock. They have goats and chickens on the farm that they're able to cycle through when their crops are done. And they're using a lot of mulch. So they're doing a lot of no-till and reduced tillage on their farm, keeping the soil covered, keeping living roots in the soil with cover crops. They're doing an amazing job. They have, I think, 7 acres in the city that they're working on. Down below them is Ron Holter. He is an incredible pastured dairy producer. He's in Jefferson, Maryland, and he is organic, all grass-fed, management intensive rotational grazing. So he moves his cows once a day. He is more profitable than his neighbors, even though he is less productive. His cows are less productive, but he's more profitable, and his quality of life has improved a ton since he kind of transitioned to this way of grazing and producing. To his left, my right, that's Claggett Farm in Upper Marlboro, and that's a diversified vegetable farm that's owned by Chesapeake Bay Foundation. They raise vegetables of all kinds for their CSA. And again, they use different practices. They're keeping the soil covered with mulch. They do till. They have a fair amount of tillage that they do, but they make up for it with a lot of cover crops, with integrating livestock when they can, with tons of mulch, and with a ton of diversity. So that's how they manage their soil health, and they do a really nice job. And they don't use a lot of synthetic chemicals and pesticides and fertilizers. They're using integrated pest management as well. And above them is one of the biggest row crop farms on the Eastern Shore. That's Trey Hill's Harborview farm. And Trey Hill uses incredible cover cropping, all like 15-way mixes. He rolls them down with the roller crimper when he can. He can't always. Sometimes he has to kill those cover crops with herbicides because they get so big and so huge that he can't seed into them. But he's always experimenting with ways to try to move his farm. He's doing no-till, so he's never tilling. And again, trying to move his farm towards healthy soils and regeneration within the context of his system. So this is how it looks, very different on different farms across the state. And again, this is what we do. This is who we are, Million Acre Challenge. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about our work and why it matters and what you can do and anything else.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. That was really informative. I have a question. Are there other Million Acre Challenges throughout the United States, or are you the only one?
We are the only one that is focused on regenerative agriculture. There is another one that actually just started. Young Farmers Network is working on 1 million acres of land access for BIPOC farmers, young BIPOC farmers. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a different take on it, but it is another Million Acre Challenge. Yeah. How to get a healthy soil test? That is a great question. There are a number of different labs that will do a soil health test for you. Waters Lab is one. We use the Cornell Comprehensive Assessment of Soil Health. That's obviously through Cornell. Regen Ag Labs is another one. The Haney test, I think Regen Ag and Waters Lab both do a Haney test, which is a soil health test. So yeah, you can get them done in different places. And they'll all give you that breadth of testing, the chemical, the biological, and the physical. Unfortunately, some of them, if you need to do a nutrient management plan, the Cornell Assessment of Soil Health uses a different way of assessing phosphorus. And so you can't use that test for your nutrient management test, but I believe Waters Lab you actually can. So you can do one test that will serve all the purposes.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Amanda, great coverage. Thank you very much. I just add a few points that are kind of recent. You probably know the metric 1% increase in soil organic matter translates into about 20,000 gallons of water that can be held by that soil. So slight improvements in organic matter can help you with your water, both holding it in storms and then through drought periods. Just to emphasize the biodiversity, the more biodiversity you have in your cover crops, the more nutrients will become available, the better the soil health will be over the long term. Adding animals in some places is a key component. eliminating pesticides so the dung beetles can come back. They can help you manage your dung. You know, if you have a healthy environment of dung beetles, they can make it disappear in 48 hours and it's back into the soil where it helps. One other thing, it's not yet a problem for us in this area, but it could very well be. Cover crops, you know, keeping bare ground covered means that you're feeding that below ground soil life, even in the wintertime when things do get somewhat dormant, but you have a head start in the spring of reactivating that below ground life that helps improve the nutrition. So that's one of the reasons for doing that. Plants, healthy plants will exude, you know, 25 to 40% of the sugars they produce through their roots to feed the bacteria and the fungi and everything else that lives. So that's the energy source powering life below the ground. Sunlight doesn't penetrate very far. You get warmth, of course, but you need another source of energy for that life stream. The other interesting fact that I learned a couple of months ago is that plants are not very efficient with using the energy in sunlight. They use less than 1% of it to photosynthesize, but they use 25 to 70% of it to transpire water from the soil through the, you know, the roots, the stalks, and the leaves. And that's a way of taking heat that on bare ground would end up becoming a warming factor and creating, you know, sometimes 20, 30 degree temperature rise above the background soil. They take that heat and they turn it into water vapor, which rises up 10, 20,000, 30,000 feet, becomes a cloud and then rain. And that condensation at the higher altitudes sheds some of that heat to space. It certainly moves it from the surface to higher in the atmosphere. So that's one way we can work to kind of cool the earth in the short term, is by doing that. And our conventional tillage practices have actually helped to desiccate most of the continents. You know, Antarctica's water is kind of frozen, but the rest of the continents have lost over the last 150, 200 years of conventional agriculture through drainage, through bare ground, through, you know, flooding and stuff that sort of sluices stuff away quickly into rivers. In North America, we lose about a Lake Erie full of water that previously would have been held on the soil and help cool the earth and you know, foster all that life to make nutritious food.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have other questions? Awesome. Well, I know
put
that
a couple of these resources in the chat just so folks have them.
great.
Some of the labs, and I'll put our website in there too, and the soil health benchmark study that we're doing is in there. Folks can take a look at that, and I'm excited to hear what you're doing. For those of you who are raising animals, you know, what feels exciting about this? What feels hard? What feels like I can't take the next step? You know, what if you think about something you could do, what feels exciting and what feels super challenging and overwhelming? And like I said, we just want folks to take the first step. That's all, or the next one if you've taken a bunch.
I know for us, we need to increase our biodiversity in our hayfield. Right now, we just have pasture grass and a whole lot of Johnson grass that we've got rid of once, and then the neighbors brought it back into us. So that I know that I need to be planting in the springtime, early, just planting some more diverse stuff in with our orchard grass.
Me too. I do too. It's constant. You know, I did listen to some folks out here in central Maryland who they'll feed hay right on their pastures, and they'll seed before they unroll a bale of hay onto their pasture. And the animal eats it and tramples it into the ground and and they do this in February, and tramples the seed into the ground. And they feel like they get a lot of pasture diversity from doing that kind of bale grazing. So I'm going to try it this winter on a pasture that I have that's mostly fescue to see if I can diversify that, because that feels positive.
Yeah, we only have small bales, but I could still do that with small bales. Require a little bit extra.
I would say to be careful doing that, because I did that the first year I had sheep, and I was, trying different farmers' hay. And that first
Yeah.
year I had some real trash in my hay.
That's a good point.
And
That's
then
a
I
good-
ended up with I have problems now because of what grew from that first round bale. It was not the first one, maybe the third round bale that I brought in.
Mhm.
And we unrolled and did that, and I've been fighting pigweed ever since. Like
No, you're
I can't
totally
get rid
right.
of it.
You're right
Yeah,
about
so
that.
you do have to
Tracy.
be careful. Yeah.
That is true. Yes. Know your hay.
Yeah.
Well, it's important. Know your farmer, right? Whether it's the fiber farmer or the hay farmer or what you're putting in your body.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
Wow. Anyone else? Well, and that note then, thank you all. If anyone wants to stay on and chat a while about other things, they're more than welcome. Amanda, thank you so much for taking
Yeah.
time out of your weekend to spend with us.
Absolutely.
Um,
I'm so excited that you all are doing this work together. It's the local Fibershed is really important, and
we're all very excited. And
Oh, yeah.
once again, a plug for Sustainable Cloth. If any of you are interested, please sign up. We want to see what our Fibershed can produce. There's so much out there.
Phil got his hand up.
I have one question to Amanda, but I think it may also apply to many of you, is the issue of, I guess, aggregation, food hub distribution, both for, farmers' crops, but also fiber crops. What kinds of things you're aware of? I've heard from many people, for instance, trying to get access to grass-fed beef. One of the issues is, where do you get it slaughtered? And there are few and far between. Are there any initiatives to try to bring back some of those processing facilities?
It's funny that you mentioned that. We are working on, well, Fair Farms is one of our partners, is working on some guidance for counties and localities who might be receiving some American Rescue Plan funds, and kind of encouraging them to use that for regional processing infrastructure, like you're talking about, the hubs and the local and regional butchers, and organic grain mills and organic grain storage, and processing for grain for human consumption and pulses for human consumption. There's a lot of ways in which our regional infrastructure has kind of degraded, and fiber is a great example of that also. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of need for that. And so the American Rescue Plan funds were one way we were thinking about trying to bring that to folks' attention, but we're also open to other suggestions about how that can happen, for sure. The
Phil,
Common Grain Alliance is doing it. Yeah, go on, Tracy.
Oh, I was just going to say, here in Virginia, VSU is building out a mobile sheep and goat production butchering, and we're going to demo it in Loudoun County in January.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so it's not, it's not
that.
fully up and running yet, but they're going to bring it out to Middleburg in January, and we're going to get to see it up in operation.
Oh, that's exciting. How would someone who was interested in that get a chance to see it?
I'll put my email in the chat. If you want to email me, I can just add you to the distribution list for it.
That'd be great. Thank you. I would be grateful for that. That's a huge issue for us. I mean, getting our lambs in is it's not easy.
And Tracy, I
thanks.
don't know if you've shared what you do with your sort of integrated sheep and vineyard operation. Amanda might be curious to know about that.
Mhm.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm not going to have my picture up. My camera's gone on the blink, so you get to look at peeling paint. Yeah, we have a small 5-acre vineyard, and the sheep are in from after harvest till bud break. And, it does everything. It aerates, it puts, organic matter back in, because not only the hay, but, they're pooping stuff out. It does lots of good things to the vineyard, and it doubles my pasture space. So that means I'm totally, off my pasture for, almost 6 months. So it's nice. I don't think you can do it with goats, but it definitely works with the sheep.
And just let me add from one, as a wine snob, the wine that Tracy produces is awesome. I
Oh,
love the wine. So great wine.
Sounds like it's working in every way. That's awesome. I know,
Good
I
field
think
trip.
Doton Vineyards does that too here in Maryland. I think he does the same thing, grazing in between the vines. He finds it
Yeah, it's
works
starting
well.
to pick up. It's more, West Coast, definitely lots of vineyards do it. And over here, at least in Virginia, we're starting to see more and more folks do it. But it is, there is good synergy.
Yeah, that's great. That is really exciting. We should do a field day around
yeah.
that. That'd be
Yeah.
cool.
We'll all be over to Tracy's soon.
And there's benefits. There's benefits.
You could do a wine and wool tour.
That's
Yeah.
true.
The wine is in it's somewhere else though, right? I don't know how far from Tracy's you have to go to get the wine, but
Just over the mountain.
just over the mountain. Yeah.
That's great. That's
It would
great.
be fun to have a tour of a lot of the farms and agricultural areas around our Chesapeake region. I think a lot of people could find a lot to be interested in and a lot to sort of find some new customers. Yeah.
Mhm.
I would really encourage that. Philip and I would we go to the Rappahannock farm tour when it happens,
Mhm.
which is the same weekend as the Shenandoah Fiber Festival. We make a whole weekend out of it. And we have a lot of fun. And I would love to see that kind of thing in other parts of the state or the region.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, it does. Yeah. So Loudoun County, we have a farm tour weekend and ours was 2 weeks ago, I think. But like in Maryland, do you guys do your counties have farm tours as well? Do you do farm
Some
tours?
of them do. Yeah, some of them do. And I don't know how focused we've been on practices, but it'd be really fun to try to do some kind of regenerative farm weekend, statewide. It'd be great. Yeah. Really cool. Oh, I should say I'm wearing wool, a lot of it. So underneath.
Good to know. Good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be fun. I'm going to write that idea down too.
I think we're all wrote that one down. I think we should all combine resources and make this happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Great. Awesome.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you all so much.
Mhm.
Amanda, thanks for being here. I loved everyone. I
Thank
learned
you.
so much, and thank you from everyone for your comments. And I look forward to trying out the wine at Tracy's and so much to do.
Well, I have a question for the fiber folks here. This is just me. I'm looking for somebody who can do some sewing, some piecework for me. Is there anybody in the DC metro area that you know that sews?
Not off the top of my head, but we can certainly look around and try to find someone. How much? I can
I
talk
know-
to you separately to see how much you need done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a lot right now. I have lap comforters made out of my wool and I want to get duvet covers made for them. And I just know it's not in my realm or my bandwidth to sit and sew.
Okay.
So I've been looking here locally and I just have not found anybody. I found one woman who's retired and doesn't want to do it anymore. And I just haven't come across anybody who could sew. I need probably 20 pieces made. It's not a lot for now. But yeah, I'm just hitting a wall. Yeah.
This is Jelaine. I will, I've got my local spinning group that covers Northern Virginia, mostly Northern Virginia.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of one member in particular who also sews.
Okay.
And she's, at least relative to me, she's closer to you than I am.
Okay.
She's somewhere, I can't remember where in Northern Virginia, but my group of people, if they don't know, if they can't do it, they probably know someone who is. So if you want to reach out to me as well.
Okay. All right.
I think between Amanda and myself, we could probably find something for you.
Right. And there's also the Potomac Fiber Arts Guild, which has a wide variety of fiber artists who might have someone. I know there are some quilters, so they might be willing to.
What was
stitch.
it? Potomac Fiber Guild?
Yes, Potomac Fiber Arts Guild.
Right.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
gotta be somebody.
Yeah, there's got to be
Right,
someone. who'll
there's
do this.
gotta be
There's
somebody,
out
right?
there.
Right, exactly.
And you might not find someone who's willing to do all 20, but
Oh, yeah, but even if I could, yeah,
break it up. Yeah.
right,
Spread-
exactly,
Spread
exactly.
the work.
Spread it out a
Yeah.
bit. Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
So, all right.
It's a
cool.
great idea. The lap comforter. I love it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love them. They're nice and cozy. It's just that they're white, they're white ticking right now, and it's not practical for people if they're gonna have it on your sofa and have a cup of tea while you're sitting there, or snacks and stuff.
Yeah.
It needs a duvet.
Cover.
Yeah,
I love it.
Right. If we could just have
right.
organic cotton grown in this area, we'd be in great shape.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And here's the other thing, there's quilters out there who would probably love to use a wool batting instead of,
Mm.
Absolutely.
I don't know how
Mm.
thick it is.
Mm.
God, Tracy, I think
It is thick. It is so, I
really
love
thick.
it. So last year, well, you were out, Jillian, but with
Yeah.
the pandemic, I didn't have a source of hand spinners. So I had comforters made for our beds, and I just fell in love with them. But the price point, I think, isn't approachable for the average person. So
Okay.
I had lap size made,
Right.
which I got them back, and I love them, and they're really thick and cozy, but they do need a protective cover. They're just
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
And that's going to be a challenge for a long time. People are so used to very inexpensive goods that
Right.
to buy a piece that they're going to keep for a lifetime and pay what local prices require, it's going to be
Yeah,
tough.
exactly.
This
Yeah.
is why you want to find people like spinners and knitters, folks who really appreciate the,
Yeah.
the source of what Tracy's offering, or anybody else for that matter. Yeah, so let's.
But it's
let's
also
talk.
trying to find people. I mean, we have a lot of very wealthy consumers in our Chesapeake Bay area who
Mhm.
could very easily afford to purchase these goods, only they sort of seem to think that they'll spend that for a designer label that came from Italy, but not for something that's been
Right.
beautifully crafted nearby. And I
Right.
think that's a big hurdle that we need to get over.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. It is. Yeah. Well, and also just, re-educating them on the benefits of wool over synthetics and over, plastic fabric that's just going into the water system, and, just all of it, right? It's
Right.
It's just
But we
a
can do
lot of
it.
re-education.
Yes.
That's
Slow
a
but
big
steady
part of-
progress.
That's a big
Right.
part of our mission to
Yeah.
educate our consumers.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, all right, ladies, thank you so much. This was great. And Philip, thank you.
A small but mighty group. And I appreciate you all being here. And Amanda, thank you again.
Likewise.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank
Amanda.
you. Thank you so
Great.
much for having us, and thanks for making the connection. I'm very grateful for that.
Great. Thank you all.
Okay, bye.
Awesome. Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Happy
Bye.
See ya.
Okay.